Hello everybody and welcome to a new reaction, not a TV show reaction, not a movie reaction today, it's gonna be a VFX reaction. This is a follow-up to my Zack Snyder's Justice League movie reaction that I posted earlier this week. If you haven't seen it, please do go check it out. And today we're reacting to the Corridor Crew. I love these guys. Everything they do, their comedy skits, their VFX breakdowns. If you haven't already, do go check out the channel and subscribe to them. That is going to be down below in the description. And it only makes sense that they'll do a reaction to the Snyder Cut, because Justice League has a little bit of VFX in it, and since there is two versions of them, you know, it would only make sense that they do it. And since I'm a filmmaker, it would only make sense that I watch these kind of videos. And you're in luck, because I was about to watch the video anyways, but one of you guys suggested in the comments section that I do a reaction to it, so there you go. The video is 20 minutes long. Without any further ado, let's jump right in. Let's go.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Never really before in history have we had the chance to compare the same high-budget films side by side.
Definitely.
The Snyder version
Definitely was what I was definitely
the human lip
looking
is the
forward
hardest
to.
thing to do in CG.
Oh, that lip.
Man, Steppenwolf just looks like a dude.
Kinda did.
Huge thanks
Totally
to
did.
ExpressVPN for sponsoring today's episode. Stick around to the end to find out how you can get 3 months free.
Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to
Hey,
another episode
Ren.
of Visual Effects Artist React. Today we are looking at some incredible Marvel movies. Scratch that. No, you heard that right. Today we're looking at not just the Justice League, but the Snyder Cut, and kind of comparing the two, because a lot of work was done to make sure the Snyder Cut could happen, and I want to look at the differences.
And a lot of money was spent too.
How expensive was this movie? Because it's like they filmed the movie, then they filmed all the reshoots.
I think
they
the
did all
Joss
visual
Whedon
effects for the
reshoot
original
cost
cut of
30
the movie,
million,
and then
and
for the reshoots,
the Snyder Cut
and
cost
then for the
70
Snyder
million.
Cut, each time there's money being spent.
It's probably more than you think is probably the answer to that. But no one will know. They'll keep that under lock and key. Not even the masked detective
I thought
himself,
it was
Batman,
known.
could figure that out. I'm willing to
If I'm not
wager.
mistaken, tell me that below in the comments.
Everybody asked us to react to this. And that's super cool. So hey, we like those comments. Keep them coming. It helps us know what to look at.
In terms of just like the idea of doing something like this cinematically is crazy. It is like unprecedented in terms of film history, because
big.
movie studios don't go back to revisit their stuff. They'll like make a sequel or whatever. It's the
Reboot.
first time, as far as we can tell, right? Where it's like, okay, cool, everyone wanted this original version, fine, we'll go and do it again.
Yeah, like normally when you see a director's cut, it's using the same source material with just slightly different editing, like with Blade Runner, you know? It's like, it's basically the same movie, just with a few
And it's really a
different
chance for
What they did was they
Zack
didn't go
Snyder,
back and
because
reshoot Blade Runner again.
Yeah.
To make
well,
a new version of
director
the
would
original
like
Blade
to
Runner.
go back on
Never
their original
really
work
before in
and
history have we had the
have a chance to
compare
improve
Yes,
some
the
things.
same
Exactly.
high-budget films side by side with itself.
Exactly, which is why a close frame-by-frame study of the Snyder Cut versus the Whedon Cut is a film school in a box. Because
Yes,
you can infer
definitely.
everything from
Editing
how
is
does the
everything.
visual effects approach
Editing is
differ,
everything.
from how does the script writing.
Just like he says, there's 3 writings in a movie: the script writing, the filming, and the editing. And there you can only see, with the editing, 2 different versions, 2 different movies, 2 different, I'm gonna say, 2 different qualities. Just people cut Joss Whedon some slack, because it's not easy taking after another director's work. It's not easy, so cut him some slack.
And story level differ from how long a shot's being held to what sequences are rearranged and what else they reshot for the Whedon Cut versus the Snyder Cut. You can learn quite a bit from it.
And I did already watch some scenes comparison, so I'm probably not going to be a stranger to what's different here, but
Barry Allen.
Right away, the color correction approach is different. Like, look at the skin tone difference, period, right? Like, in terms of the reds, how much more intensely colorful the Whedon Justice League is versus Snyder.
Color grading starts delving into the world of visual effects. Arguably, color grading is visual effects. It's you taking your film and manipulating the colors, putting vignettes on, masking certain things out, you know, swapping the blue hue of the sky for more of a gold or something like that. Like, that's visual effects.
People think of color grading as just like dropping a filter on top of footage and it does what it does, and it's like, no, there's actually a lot of specific attention played out in different parts of an image just to get those colors and lighting contrast right.
For everybody who kind of like makes fun of like, oh, this is Zack Snyder Justice League, it's like, oh, it's all muted and stuff like that. It's like, well, no, he's still getting tonality out of it.
Snyder's almost...
I didn't know that people were making negative commentaries of it because, it stands out. Marvel movies are kind of the reference nowadays of the superhero movie, and they're really, really colorful. So the fact that DC comes darker, DC has always been darker than Marvel, and Warner Brothers has always been doing movies since forever more gloomy, I think that's the word, gloomy, darker movies, more rooted in reality. And I really liked the tone of the Zack Snyder's cut. And by the way, regarding color grading, like he said, a lot of people think that it's just a filter that you put on top of your image, or just that you enhance saturation or contrast. Or it is some of that, but not only that. If you really pay attention to the color grading in the Snyder cut, you will notice that some colors are brighter than others, but on very specific elements of the shot, just like the little red coated girl in the Schindler's List. It's not that red is bright everywhere, it's just on her, and there's a lot of that in the Snyder cut if you really do pay attention.
Almost has like a metallic look to it.
Yeah. The other thing is also a big difference in the Snyder cut. Square frame 4:3 versus widescreen. So this is actually something that I think is really interesting. It's a huge, huge thing. I mean, it became a meme, right? Oh, the Snyder's vision. Here's the thing I think is interesting about 4:3. I've always felt that super widescreen for superhero movies makes the superheroes look small. Like when there's a big vista and the person doesn't quite fit in that frame. It's like, just from a visual standpoint, I've always felt like it makes human figures in wide vistas look tiny, which is not the emotional feeling of superhero movies. Superhero movies are about big, larger-than-life characters. So weirdly enough, when I look at the square format stuff, comparing the two movies when I watched it, I actually really liked the square format because it made the individual characters feel like these like godlike figures, more so than I think widescreen does.
I'm pretty sure
I'd say yes and no to this, because it has also a lot to do with the framing. You could have a certain aspect ratio on your image. I'm not going to go into technicalities, but basically today you choose your ratio regarding your artistic vision. But it has a lot to do with framing as well. When you choose a ratio, you also need to compose your image regarding this. So if you have a wider image, you have to make sure that your action is taking place on a lot of places. If you do a square one, it's a little different. So I get his point, but the framing has a lot to do with this. So I'm not totally agreeing on the fact that because it is widescreen, it squishes your characters in it. If you have the right framing, if you have the right composition on screen, it can totally work out. But it has a lot to do with the human perception as well, because the human eye sees wider, well, not the human eye, but with your two eyes, you see wider and you see taller. So there's something like this as well that comes into play when you choose 2.35 or 4:3. So there's that. But I really love the 4:3 here.
the original Justice League movie was finished at the widescreen. The VFX shots were finished at that aspect ratio. Did they have to go back and re-render them with the extra resolution up on top and bottom?
This movie is why it's important to have a good file naming convention structure for your projects. Because you never know when you need to go back and open up those old files. You can't open up that folder and be like, ooh, shot 30-1, version 3, final 4. Oh, which one is it? No,
Everybody who's done editing or VFX or any kind of post-production work knows about this stuff. I've done post-production work. That's hell when you have a ton of files and you just have to go through, and it's even worse, when you're 1, 2, 3, but when you're 4,000 people, like in these movies, you need to have a good naming convention, especially since they had to go back to check the folders from 5 years ago. I mean,
Can't have that.
And that's all on Weta. Like, they did such a good job being able to like bring up their old project files. But here's the thing.
Weta.
It's one thing to be able to like open up the old project files, but you can't just like make it rework for the new stuff that they're adding here.
Yeah, go check their commentaries on the Endgame. I think they did, they did pretty much all the Marvel movies. But yeah, I learned from them that the Endgame portal scene was done using folders from all the previous movies. So, and just like he says, depending on the year it was done, you can not just take the elements and insert them in. You sometimes have to tweak them a little bit so that everything matches up. But quite impressive.
We're gonna have to like dive into that here.
Yes, Steppenwolf was really excited about the new look, about the all
So
new
I think
look.
it is time to address probably the biggest elephant in the room, Steppenwolf. And I think it's very safe to say that one is quite a bit cooler than the other. That's a mild way of putting it.
Man, Steppenwolf just looks like a dude in the 2017
Straight up.
version.
No, like he is.
And the skin is not that
Like
beautiful.
old Steppenwolf's name would be like Brody.
The original Steppenwolf, which is, okay, to clarify, the Steppenwolf we see in Justice League is not the original Steppenwolf. The one we see in the Snyder Cut is the original. That was the original
That's
design.
what I meant by the
They
old
had
new
this
look.
character before Joss Whedon came on board. Like, it looked like that. And they redesigned him, not intentionally to make him look lame, but that was the result.
So
Yeah,
one thing that
pretty
is
much.
interesting to me looking at the character design, right? One of them I just don't buy winning against a bunch of Amazons.
Totally.
Right? Like
Totally.
the one in this giant scaly metal thing, it's like I buy a bunch of people holding it and building it up.
It's
it
a
doesn't
war
quite
machine.
work as well if it's this guy in this costume with this sort of medieval looking armor and you have 8 different Amazons
Look at
holding
him.
him down. It just doesn't quite have the same impact. I will say when I was watching it, I found myself like just exploring the physicality of the
Okay, before he gets to another point, yeah, just look at the 2017 Steppenwolf. He doesn't look mean, he doesn't look menacing. He's a tall guy, but that's just it. I mentioned it in my reaction to Justice League, that this Steppenwolf that we get here is always so angry, is always so mean, is always so much of a danger. And yes, he's a war machine compared to the 2017 version. And I really love that about the new Steppenwolf. And by the way, regarding the Jude thing, he kind of falls into the uncanny, and not that much the uncanny valley, but he doesn't look real, you know. I don't know why they wanted to go with that one. VFX producers and supervisors on the 2017 movie, I think, should have known that it wouldn't work out because when you try to do human-like faces, you better have the skin tone, the reflection, the shadows, the texture, everything on point so it really looks real. And it didn't look that real. So in these cases, when you know that you can't go with a human face, go with an alien face, just like the final version that we got here, you have better chances to make it out with a non-human face than with a human face in these cases. Anyways.
this CG creature way more. Just looking at his like chest and looking at the little like the way his shoulders are built, like my
The
eye had
armor
something to
things
do,
was
like, during
amazing.
it, you know.
Steppenwolf's armor is super detailed, right? It's like hyper detailed. There's little bits everywhere. Now there's a big danger to doing something like that because it can very quickly become noise. And it would be a danger of you losing any of his form if you did that. There's two things they did to fix that. One is his silhouette is super clean and smooth. The fact that the suit is so shiny, you can still see the bright white outlines of his body as he moves. There's not little spikes everywhere. That's one of the problems you run into with the Transformers robots.
Yes, actually.
Yeah, is there's not really a readable silhouette. But there's another thing that they do. So imagine somebody wearing a hyper-detailed polka dot outfit. Maybe the silhouette is smooth, but it's still just noise everywhere, right? Well, that's what you could have had happen with Steppenwolf, and that is what happens with his helmet in the 2017 version, is that it's just a bunch of squiggles, which is basically the same thing as just noise. In the new version, there's a pattern, almost like the direction of your hair, to all of the pieces of his armor. And one of the things the human eye is surprisingly good at is detecting parallel lines and then changes in those lines. Like, I could put a big, pile of noodles on the floor. I could take, and I could have them all point in the same direction, and I could take
we've done
one.
that before, by the way.
I'm quite obsessed with straight lines. So yes, just like he says, it's quite tricky when you do something with a lot of pieces and motives, and that's what he's saying here is pretty much what you also have to consider when you're not doing any VFX, but just when you're framing something, you either work on the framing, you either work on the depth of field, meaning the blur in your image, you either work on the colors or you either work on the lighting, and outlining also objects is what can really help you to define objects in the space and really make sure that it's quite readable, because just like he says, it can also just be unreadable and be noisy.
I could take one noodle and turn it from the direction of all the others, and you can just look at it and immediately be like, that noodle's in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
And it seems normal until you think about it, your eye can process 1,000 objects and immediately tell instantly when one is not aligned. And that's the thing that they're relying upon with Steppenwolf's armor, is that by doing the pattern and the flow to it, you're also getting shape, really distinct, macro shapes in his armor, even though it's made out of a bunch of micro shapes.
And some of the animations with the new model, you can see in some of the sequences, it's a weightier animation set. They went in and just tweaked it. And you can look at some of the movements in
they got
earlier
the physics
versions
right,
and then see where it ends up
got
in the
the
Snyder
weight
cut.
of
You can actually see
the
it
scale
evolve from being this feels floaty to oh, this feels like a little more like there's something there and there's momentum behind it.
Because the thing with Steppenwolf is that he's a big guy, and that's the thing. When you are bigger, you move slower, and the 2017 version didn't move that slowly, so you didn't really grasp the weight and the power of him, which contributed to the fact of him not being so menacing. This Steppenwolf, he walks, he's heavy. You see, when he grabs something, it has momentum, just like he says, and that's something that you could. If you pay attention to movies like Godzilla, if you watch movies like Pacific Rim, you can all try to see what's working and what's not, King Kong from Peter Jackson as well. What's The Lord of the Ring of Peter Jackson, yeah, so that's really what brings you into making your CGI character real. But I'm talking a lot in this reaction, but this is quite normal since this is a breakdown, so.
In the Snyder cut, you can actually see it evolve from being this feels floaty to oh, this feels like a little more like there's something there and there's momentum behind it.
There's one shot of Steppenwolf that literally made my jaw just drop when I saw it. Just take care to look at the interaction between the liquid and CG characters.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
sexy.
Yeah.
That's a 3D
It's VFX
color
sexy.
right there.
Oh yeah. Put a puddle
water,
in and make it harder.
simulation.
Hey, do you want this shot to be a little harder for everybody? Put a puddle in there. Get some water in. Oh.
But it's more than
Yeah, that's the thing. When you have a low budget movie, you avoid these extra things, that make your shot complicated. But when you have the budget, go for it, because that's what makes your character real, interacting with the environment.
just the puddle. There's mud that's coming up, and the water's interacting with it. That's sick.
so dope. That's sick.
I saw that. I was like,
The-
oh my
the
god.
twig-
People
the twig
have no idea
moving
how much
and
effort just went
wobbling.
into that one small moment to really merge and marry Steppenwolf with the scene. It's small tricks like that really help sell CG objects as being real. Interaction.
But I can see that mud in the water being actual displacement from a real person. Just watch it stick under his left foot. Boink. The way that stick moves and that little splash in the water there, I don't think that's CG.
But look at the size of his foot. No one's walking around with size
Big old
48
boots.
feet.
Big
Yeah,
old
you can
boots,
put big old
dude.
boots on.
Big old boots, dog.
It's just the awareness to make a stick bounce.
The
in a
ripples
perfectly
in the
realistic way
water.
like that.
It's just
Fantastic.
good artistic.
So yeah, maybe the twig is not real, I don't know. But when things happen like this in VFX shot or animated shots or animation movies, I always find it quite impressive because it is man-made, it is man-controlled, it is well, a person decided to animate this and to do this and these details, because when you're not doing animation or things like this, you film your actor, things happen, you know, when I'm moving my hair just like this, you know, the hair moves in a specific way, the fabric on my shoulder is moving a specific way, and it happens quite naturally, and you know, it happens. But when you're animating, when you're doing VFX, these things, unless you're in the simulating, but that's another thing, these things don't happen naturally. You have to make them act like this, and that's when it's not done. You don't know. Well, you notice it, and you don't know what's wrong, but you know it's wrong. But when it happens, you don't notice it as a casual viewer, but it's good. If you don't notice it, that means it's good.
Detail.
I think that stick feels real to me.
Yeah, it feels real to me too. Maybe Weta will let us know.
Yeah, no, here I actually would be super interested to see a breakdown of this specific shot. Weta, HBO, whoever, Warner Brothers, make it happen.
Props to Snyder for showing the stunt people hit the ground when they do the stunt. Like in the original cut, she hits the wall and it cuts away. It's like the wall impact isn't what's important. It's the impact on the ground that's important.
Stunts people never get
it's the
hit, it's the wreck.
the prize they should get.
Snyder's someone who I think, when you look at his work, is someone who is like obsessed with the dynamic
blurring them to Manhattan.
Stunt people and their movement. I think it shows because the Snyder version feels like it has more momentum and weight. So she's gonna make a run for it. There's a real cost here. Needs to get out.
Love
of the
that
box,
scene.
right? They're gonna have to break the wooden supports in order to drop gates.
Trapping themselves that hallway.
Into the hallway.
Knowingly doing so.
To me, this is a huge difference between the two. These shots here of these Amazons knocking down the pillars, done in slow motion. Look at how many more there are. Zack Snyder is so in love with the human form that he gives you the entire wind-up all the way around, which gives you the sense of weight and the heaviness of it. What do you get in the Whedon cut? You get the last bit of it of just the impact. Yeah. It's not about the impact. It's about this Herculean effort to like throw this hammer all the way around.
Seeing it all.
These are giant, larger-than-life beings destroying things. It's so much more intense to build up. Look at how much you're gonna...
And not only the framing, the lighting in this scene is phenomenal on the bodies, because you can have muscles, but if you have bad lighting, it doesn't look much like an impressive thing. But these girls, they have the muscles, they have the definition, and when they swing like this, you see the shadows on the bodies and the abs, and it's all really beautiful with the slow motion. I really love the slow motion in this movie. It really sublimated everything.
The miss in the original cut of just their struggle holding it up and how much of a build-up it is.
And it enhances the drama, you know, and the tension. Look at this. That shot particularly making the effort.
Long slide shot all the way and slow all the way, and you see it, this finality of it closing, as opposed to in the...
You
again,
feel the weight
okay,
with
they're
them.
just trapped in there, because there's no point.
And then what's crazy here is that in the original Justice League, they just leave and then he busts through the wall and chases after them. But in the Snyder cut, you're like, there are hundreds of people in that thing, and it's now falling into the ocean. They're all dying right now. You're just like, when I watched the Snyder cut of this, I was just like, like my jaw was literally dropped.
This thing was so much cooler.
That's phenomenal. And the particle simulation.
I
forgot it. Even I was talking about the VFX
It's
before.
arguably a flawless shot. Like the physics are perfect, the smoke is perfect, the lighting's great. Like
this was definitely a money shot on their list of like important shots.
Big money shot. The dust getting in there,
temple
water
falling,
interaction.
CGR dog. Yeah. Yeah. The VFX department on these. That shot, I really loved it.
and the glass melts. That's amazing.
and the shimmer on this hot dog
Some artists have to
texture.
make a perfect movie quality CG hot dog.
Yeah, the imperfections
I'd say
in the
overall,
in the
this
shape.
scene is pretty dang great. Like my misgivings for like how it actually happened with her and momentum and all that stuff, like it doesn't matter. He saves the woman from a car crash in a really cool slow-mo way. How do you think they filmed that though?
I imagine she's on a wire.
It's kind of like a wire, but I think it's actually a motion control arm. She's got her hair pulled back, so all of the hair you see is computer
yes,
generated.
because of
They did the
course
CG hair also for Wonder Woman when she's moving really fast in that fight scene.
you have to.
She's ramping all over the place. Her hair
Of
wouldn't move
course.
like that if you just did regular speed ramps. They had to take her hair out.
But there's another aspect of her that's computer generated that you might not have realized. Her clothes.
You kind of saw in the movie that her hair were generated when the final moment when she sprints to grab the bomb case before she jumps out. If you pay attention, because I've seen these scene a few times now, when she swings in and she stops before the case, as she grabs it, you see the hair is waving quite strangely. If you really do watch the scene, pay attention, she stops, but the hair should just, wave back and forth. But it doesn't, it weighs, it extra weighs her. So you could kind of tell that these were CGI hair.
Oh, really? Because they need a ripple in the correct way.
Yeah.
That's textbook. Oh, you think you know what's CG in this shot? You're like, oh yeah. What about all her hair in her coat? Oh, you didn't look real. I could tell. No, you didn't.
So the hair is really great.
Yeah.
Okay, so they didn't.
Notice how he's being very careful to keep his hands outstretched and not actually pressing down on her, because they knew that they're going to have to replace all of that. So they didn't want to have like him physically conforming his hand to clothing that's not
So
there
clever.
yet. They actually
Okay, so they didn't do that in slow-mo.
nailed the surface contact shadows between his hand and her clothes really well.
Really clever. I really thought that they had done that some sort of a slow-mo. Maybe there's an extra slow-mo, to really emphasize on this, but it's really impressive. Really clever.
There are moments in the movie, in the Snyder Cut, that they needed to do basically reshoots without reshooting. So what do?
Well, they probably used old footage.
They used old footage. So there's a scene between Darkseid and Superman, and he's like all like sad and whatnot. But it's from Man of Steel after Zod dies. That's like the actual moment from the movie years ago. They added a little bit of a CG tear going down his face too.
The only thing jank is the shadow from Darkseid. As we talked about in the Harry Potter piece, it's really hard to add shadow on something that's already lit.
But I mean, that being said, they did a really good job here. It doesn't take you out of it at all. It's just a cool detail that it's like, in order to make something happen, you pull out all the stops to, just do what's necessary. Oh, you got to use old footage? Well, make it work.
Oh, the lips.
Well, in that case.
Another thing that blew me away when I went back to rewatch the Justice League was that the Snyder Cut opens on this really moody moment of Superman dying and yelling and sound waves going out.
Which was a really
and then
great
the original
change,
Justice League opens up with, "Hi, I'm Superman." For those of you who don't know the story, Henry Cavill was currently working on Mission Impossible 5, 6?
Something like that.
Mission Impossible Mustache Edition.
He was contractually obligated to keep that mustache. He couldn't shave it for these reshoots. And they're like, you fix it in post, right? Well,
The human lip is the hardest thing to do in CG.
so in the new version, this is just not present at all. It was completely cut. There is no reshoot of Henry Cavill with a mustache in the Snyder Cut.
Because those were reshoots for the Whedon cut originally, right?
Do you know what? Zack Snyder, he's doing away with Joss Whedon's original vision, And I think we should bring it back. We should bring back the Whedon cut. So I think we need to give Superman the mustache he deserves.
Are they gonna do?
We have all of this incredible reference footage from Mission Impossible with Henry Cavill with the mustache.
They're
What if
gonna
we
do a
defake the
deepfake?
mustache
Yeah.
back onto all of the Superman shots? Because Superman needs a mustache. That's right, we are releasing the mustache cut. So subscribe for that video. It's coming out very soon. Don't forget, we got, Peter here, and he doesn't do things not at 900%. I mean, how big would Superman's mustache actually be?
Good question. I mean, you guys know how Superman shaves, right?
I mean, regarding lips, because they're just gonna battle right now. Regarding lips, I think the greatest lip CGI that I saw, the greatest that I saw was also where I saw one of the worst ones. Not worst ones, but it wasn't that great. It was in Rogue One. I think Tarkin was really great. What bothered me on Tarkin is that it was a little too shiny, you know. But the lip I thought was really greatly animated, and if you really do pay attention, you would think that the CGI Tarkin lip is moving quite oddly, but Peter Cushing had a really particular way to talk, so it didn't really. I thought it was pretty great, but the Princess Leia lip in the end is a little odd, but with Tarkin, I thought they'd done a really, really great job.
They address this. If there's a canon.
No,
to House of
wait, no,
Manchés.
really? So good. What a weird thing to exist. It's right, there's so many things that had to come together for this movie to exist. It's one of these weird artifacts of film history that happens so rarely that when it does, it warrants your attention.
It's an event.
You know what? If you're into film, definitely recommend going frame by frame and really thinking about what the differences are and how they affect the final product and your perception of the final product.
You know, there's a lot of comments in these threads talking about how great Dungeons and Daddies is.
No, people liking the podcast.
Yeah, so people are listening.
So I've been doing this podcast called Dungeons and Daddies. It's a D&D podcast. This last year I've also been helping out my dad with his book, which describes his escape from the Chinese Cultural Revolution by swimming the channel between China and Hong Kong, which is like a 5 or 6 mile swim, which is very long.
Yeah, that 5 or 6 miles may not seem that long, but if you're swimming that, how long did it take him?
It took him 8 hours.
8 hours of swimming. How did he not drown?
Flotation device. There's a whole thing.
fair.
He wrote a book about it. I helped him out with it.
What a story.
It's called Swimming to Freedom. You can pre-order it right now. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Yeah, so yeah, it's a good...
So, what an awesome breakdown. I really love these guys and their insights on all these movies. So, what I really learned today is that they had to... I hadn't thought about that, but they had to re-render every single VFX shot because of the framing, because of the ratio, so that was really great. But yes, a lot had to be said on this movie. I don't know if they're going to do maybe a part 2, because I feel like they have not... there's a lot more that they could review, but basically yes. If you haven't seen maybe the previous videos, you're gonna guess probably what they're gonna say in the sometimes. Well, what's gonna be really interesting to comment on. I mean, but yeah, a lot of things. What I really love the color grading. I really love the framing. I really love the new Steppenwolf. They did an amazing job on the slow-mos. I mentioned it a few times in the reaction. I think that the VFX team on this really was on point, and I'm always so impressed by what VFX can do nowadays. Unfortunately, it costs a lot of money, but some days I would just really like to do some things thanks to VFX. Thanks to VFX, you can basically imagine anything nowadays, do anything. So when you write, your imagination can go anywhere. So yes, that was my reaction to the Corridor Crew. If you like that, smash the like button. Tell me down below in comments if you'd like more of these more how could I say this, deep reviews, I don't know, of movies and things like this. Obviously there's a lot of other movies out there that I could comment on for hours. I won't do, be reassured, hours long videos, but I really love, I'm a filmmaker, I love talking about the craft. So if that's something that interests you, I could just talk more and more and more about anything really. So just pop down below in the comments, tell me what you'd be interested in, and when I have a spot on the channel, we're just gonna do it. That's how it is. So thank you very much, guys, for watching, and I'll be seeing you in my next video. Take care. Bye.